Joining us now is former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman. He's a former advisor to the January 6th Select Committee. With us on set, John Heilemann, host and executive producer of Showtime's The Circus, executive editor of The Recount, also an MSNBC national affairs analyst. Denver Riggleman, it's so nice to have you back. I know your work for the committee wasn't something you talked about, so we missed you. We missed your voice in these conversations. But I wonder if you can start with today's hearing, and then if we could talk about what's been presented so far in your view. What stood out to you? For me, I will never forget this testimony and the lives that are destroyed by Donald Trump to this day from these lies.
You know, first of all, Nicole, it has been a while. It's good to be back. And, you know, as far as the witnesses today, I would think that Rusty and Shay were two of the strongest witnesses that we've seen. You know, I have looked at a lot of this. It's good that John's on the panel. I just talked to him about some of this. But it seemed like there were multiple levels of intimidation and bullying that were happening at all times. And I sort of know this from the data. But you're looking at two things that they did. And if you want to look at military speak, Nicole, it's kinetic and non-kinetic, right? Non-kinetic being physical threats and intimidation, and then non-kinetic using social media to attack people, right? To push this narrative of stop the steal and other types of, you know, bizarre and ridiculous rumors, you know, about what happened to Shay, you know, which is really hard to watch. And what it made me think about was my own wife and daughters in the last 2 years. What they've gone through, and it's just not fair. It's not right, and it's really difficult, you know, to be, you know, a counterterrorism analyst for 2 decades, to do what I've done. But it was the emotion of those I think of their testimony. Sorry about that, Mike Pence's fly. But their testimony was just absolutely overwhelming. And I think that's what struck me. And I wish, you know, I had all these analyses, Nicole, that I wanted to talk about. But I think it's the human toll that we saw today that really bothered me on a pretty deep level.
Well, and we'll get to the analysis. I'm grateful to you for starting with the human toll, because I want to ask you if you think it's fair to watch these hearings, to witness the evidence marshaled in terms of the human toll, and expect criminal charges to be filed against Donald Trump and his inner circle.
You know, from what I've seen, you know, and I get to see a lot of data, I've got to see a lot of data, but I can't take the committee's thunder. And I know that sometimes it's frustrating, but they are doing such a great job. But I do believe that when you're looking at the things that are happening, even at another layer underneath, I think it's possible, because what the committee doesn't have time to do is to look at every single first, second, third, and fourth tier individual that was pushing this out into the states. And I think when the report comes out, and when you see other testimony, Nicole, you're going to see that there was a lot more people involved in the alternate elector scheme than was even identified today. And I would really encourage people to look at open source research out there, to look at what people are identifying as far as the individuals. I wish I could talk about them more. I think the committee is going to bring it up. And Nicole, I think as we go forward, what I'd like for you to watch for, and I think everybody, is coordination from right beneath the president all the way to the individuals that were briefing state legislators in their home counties and their home states. I think that's going to be absolutely shocking when the report comes out, when you see how many people were involved with this scheme.
When a federal judge described John Eastman and Donald Trump as likely committing felonies, I feel like that was almost a spoiler alert for where the committee was heading. That judge made that ruling based on a filing from the January 6th committee. When you look at the evidence as it's being presented by the committee, it's very methodical. The first hearing was to show that Donald Trump lost the election, and Donald Trump knew he lost the election. The Pence presentation of evidence was that Donald Trump knew what he was asking Mike Pence to do was illegal, and he did it anyway. And the icing on the cake, or the cherry on the sundae, has been Ivanka Trump, basically siding with Bill Barr that the election was lost and she believed him, and Mike Pence describing, or based on witness testimony, being repulsed, essentially, by her father's conduct in the phone call with Mike Pence. I wonder if in your view, we're taking the right thing. Evidence proved, box checked. Trump lost and he knew it. Trump knew what he asked Mike Pence to do was illegal, box checked. Today, he knew that there were threats of violence against these officials, even pursued the plan anyway. The testimony of Rusty Bowers involves multiple phone calls from Donald Trump. I mean, it seems to be the committee's mission to put Donald Trump not just at the center of the conspiracy, but on top of it.
Well, when you have that many people involved, the committee has to blend so many different things. You're right, Nicole. They had to start with the timeline. I think you noticed in the first hearing, they started with the timeline based on the video in certain types of hearing to set up the next hearing. What they're doing is building the case. And it looks like a massive command briefing that I used to do in the intelligence community, where you'd have the bluff, the bottom line up front. You would tell them what you're going to tell them. And then you'd have the middle part of your briefing, which is you tell them what you're going to tell them. And then you tell them what you told them, right? So you have these three things, right? Tell them what you told them, then you tell them, then you tell them, tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. And that's what the committee's doing. And I think it's marvelous that they're going through it in such a methodical fashion. And some people might say, well, it's too methodical. Facts and data sometimes aren't that exciting, but the testimony that you're seeing that's actually linked to those facts and testimony is showing the human toll of how these type of ridiculous behaviors and this type of messaging and conspiratorial grift really affects individuals at the ground level. And I think once the committee sends their evidence to the DOJ and they actually merge that data, it's possible you could see some things come out of that could be fireworks.
Do you think the committee will ultimately make a criminal referral to DOJ, Denver?
Honestly, I don't think they have to. I mean, the DOJ, if Garland comes out and says he's watching this closely, a referral is not going to matter. The DOJ is already on it. So once you get a data exchange or you get some type of evidence exchange, at that point, the DOJ is on it, and the committee has done its job. And my guess is we're going to see another year to a year and a half, if possible, of parsing that much data. And again, what the committee has tried to do is gargantuan, and I think they're really succeeding at it right now.
Tell me what you mean by data. You mean like metadata, phone data? You mean emails and texts?
Oh.
Tell me what you mean.
Oh gosh, Nicole, you and your questions. I think
We've waited a long time for this.
Well, I tell you, John tried to get me too. But with the email, obviously the email and the documents, but there's so much metadata. People know that call detail records are out there. They also know that there was open source intelligence research. So there is a lot of data that the committee has that they've been able to use to base a lot of their investigation on. And that data, some of that data just can't be released yet, or the committee is going to release it in its due time, sort of as a structural proof into what they're doing. So yeah, there's so much more data that you've seen that the committee has. And I think they've been very, very good, at doling out the parts that they need to and keeping that other data back, maybe for the DOJ, but also for future hearings. And I think, there's metadata out there. And I think the committee has enough of it to where I think the DOJ will be excited about it. And I think they're going to use that for future hearings.
Can you pull back the curtain on, in your view, in your analysis, how this investigation is different from the two impeachments and the Mueller probe? We see for the first time some of the former assistant U.S. attorneys and U.S. attorneys who seem to be the investigative drivers of this. We see Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson and Adam Schiff very deferential to the investigators. This seemed like a pure fact-finding mission. Is that tell me your characterization, or if that's right.
I know all of them, and I got goosebumps when you asked me the question, because so many of them, they're so nonpartisan. They're such heroes, and it's the people behind the scenes doing that kind of work that I think Americans need to embrace. And you saw Shea today, right, Nicole? What a hero, right? How can you imagine going out there, never having testified before Congress before, talking about a president that attacked you? And then, there is a similarity with the heroes behind the scenes on the staff that is doing this work. They have to collate just massive amounts of data. So here's what I think the difference is. And if I may be blunt, I don't think there's been a congressional committee in the history of the United States that had to parse this much data. You look at just the DOJ charged defendants, over 800 of them. You look at how many records they have to look through, 1,000 interviews, and all of the actual supporting data behind those interviews is so massive. And we have had to come up with a way to manage that data, analyze that data, and then to present that data in a way that the American public can understand it. I think it's an incredible lesson learned, and I think it really is a blueprint for what investigations could look like going forward.
You mentioned your role in counterterror, and Liz Cheney certainly talks about Trumpism and keeping Donald Trump away from the Oval Office as though he's a threat to our democracy. I wonder how much her views of the threat that Trumpism poses to our democracy shapes both the intensity and the tempo of this investigation.
Well, there seems to be, when you look at the movement, whether they want to define it as MAGA or far right or just Trump-specific supporters, it seems like sort of the bedrock of that is intimidation or bullying or alienating anybody that has an alternate view. And then when you do that, what happens is that people have to pick a tribe one way or the other. And if they think that power resides in being close to Trump, that's what they're going to do. And you know, I think what we have to go back to is this, and Nicole, I think this might be the biggest indicator. What I'm going to say is how, I would say, how strong the Trump messaging was before January 6th are the 147 individuals who voted to object to the election. That is power. That's incredible power. And that really is a social media push. It's a digital push, but it's also a push of fear, fundraising. It's sort of that whole glom of information that's put out there where the base is driving these individuals instead of them doing what's right based on morality. That is a scary thing. And, you know, if that's politics, I didn't really want to be involved with it too much anymore, but that's what it is that you have individuals who are worried about power. And if they think that power is based on the money and the gravitas that Trump's give them, you know, morals and truth be damned. Let's go ahead and say whatever we can to get elected, and then we'll deal with the fallout afterwards. I think that's very dangerous for American democracy.